Hi, today we are going to do our spiced lamb with garlic toast. This can be a dinner, this can be a lunch. I'm going to go through a different way to serve it a little bit later, particularly if you are cooking for younger children. So, the recipe in the book serves one. That means that depending on how many you are going to be cooking it for, you will need to increase the amount of your ingredients, just like we did in class, just like we practiced. So, this asks for 2 cloves of garlic, 1 for the marinade, 1 for the toast. So altogether that means 8. Now I've got some massively huge cloves here. I reckon that's sort of equal to 2, equal to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That should be enough, I think. Might sort that one out. So that should be enough for us. In front of me I've got everything ready. So there's my garlic. I've got my lemons. I've got my cumin. I've got some salt for getting our garlic ready. I've got our paste here, which is the chili paste. I had to make my own because I forgot to get some. So I used some chili flakes, some cayenne, and a little bit of tomato in that one just to turn it into a paste. And I did put the chili flakes in some boiling water for a while first, so softened them up and came to more of a pasty sort of consistency. So it asks for us to, I think we've got to crush our garlic. So exactly the same way as I showed you last time, we give it a bit of a bash to get the outer leaves off. Already smells really good. So obviously we will halve this once it comes time to use it for the marinade. Hopefully I haven't forgotten any of the marinade ingredients. So we can just then peel off those outer parts there. So remember that first one I did show you different ways to chop or to treat your garlic, and how we use it, how we chop it will very much impact the final result, the final flavour. Obviously this is very garlicky. Now then, just going to run you through some changes to this or modifications that you can use for this recipe. So at the moment, as I found out, lamb is really expensive. This might be something you do another time. Just because I looked for the midline chops, I looked for other alternatives, and they were all quite expensive. I did get loin chops, but they're quite small, and for 8 it was reasonably expensive. So there is an alternative for this one, and an alternative way of serving it that you could use if you wanted to get the flavours in. And the flavours of this is really good. The cumin and the lemon are really, really nice together with that little bit of chili. They taste really, really good. So the idea for us for this one is to get our lamb into the marinade, to marinate our lamb for a while, and then to take it out and pan fry it. I've got some quite small chops. I'll probably cut the meat off before I marinate to make them smaller. It'll cut down my cooking time as well, because you should really be cooking it or frying it off whole and slicing it. But I just couldn't get the right chops at the moment. So we're going to blame the pandemic for that one. That is a lot of garlic. So there's an alternative that you can actually use. So in supermarkets, there is minced lamb. Now, what I suggest you do is it'll come in the usual 500, so half kilo lot, which is more lamb. It is minced. It's not a high grade mince, so it's reasonably fatty. But as you fry it off, you can, the fat will come out. You can remove it should you want to. And I suggest not oiling the pan before you start. because quite a lot of oil will come out. So instead of using, what we're doing now, what you can do is fry off the lamb. You can fry it with a little bit of diced onion if you want to. I would suggest maybe half a diced onion. As you fry it off, let it get brown. Add in the cumin. So probably 2 to 3 tablespoons of teaspoons of cumin. And particularly if you are cooking for somebody younger, you could also put in about 3 to 4 teaspoons, I'm just going to wash my hands, teaspoons of cinnamon, which I've got out. Now the cinnamon sort of gives it a little bit of an added dimension to the flavour. It makes it a bit more child friendly. It adds an extra dimension as well. It's really quite nice. So you could, once you've done that, add some tomatoes, a tin of tomatoes, a little bit of chili or a little bit of cayenne, just a tiny bit to spice it up, and cook it through and use that instead. So, and when you serve it as a wrap rather than on toast. So with some salad. So you would put the meat in, some cucumber, some lettuce, some tomato, and you can also make, because we're on the garlic, and this is another way to have it instead of the marinade, just make a garlic sauce with some Greek yogurt and some crushed garlic, which is exactly what I'm doing now. So it's a different way to have it. Can be a more child-friendly, easier option on the eating. And especially at the moment with the sort of meat that we can get, it's probably easier for us during this time to have something like that. Less expensive, probably more child-friendly, and we were talking about eating for families. Not saying that this isn't a really nice recipe, it actually is. It tastes really quite delicious, so that would be something that you could do. I'm just going to cut these now while I let the salt do its work on our garlic. So while that's sitting there doing that, we will have a look at our marinade. So we need the juice of our lemon, so remember it's half for 1, I'm doing this for 4, so we're juicing 2 lemons. For the other option I was talking about, you can actually add the lemon juice at the end, just squeeze a little bit on. If you're cooking for young children, I would probably leave that out altogether. Now the reason that we use lemon juice or any acid in a marinade is to start breaking down the collagen in the meat. So basically meat is muscle and it's made up of little bundles of fibres. Now when we cook meat, when we apply heat, you actually start to break down those little bundles that the muscle is in. So that connective tissue in between those bundles of muscle, or the bundles in the muscle I should say, they break down with the heat. Another way to break them down is through using an acid. So we have 2 acidic ingredients in the in our marinade. One is the lemon juice. The other is the tomato paste. So it asks for 2 tablespoons. Obviously, I'm going to have to put in 8. 1, I'm not going to be too exact here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay. Next is our cumin, and we need 1 teaspoon. So multiply it by 4, and I'm putting 4 teaspoons of the cumin. So I have the big one of these because I do use a lot of this. 1, 2, 3, and We have soy sauce, which I definitely forgot to get out. I was having a panic, so I thought I didn't have any. What to do? So we need a teaspoon of soy. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it does ask for 1/4 teaspoon. It should be a full teaspoon. I've got half here. I'm going to put a half. So I might put it all in. Live dangerously. There we go. Alright. So we've got our lemon juice, tomato paste, cumin, chili paste. We haven't put our garlic in yet, and soy sauce. We have oil, but that's for frying the lamb. We don't need to do much with this. You can use a whisk or you can use a fork on this, like that. Now, it might not smell so great right now. The cumin is quite overpowering. If you did want to put some cinnamon in, you could definitely do that now. Just looks like that. It's pretty straightforward. And now we're going to crush the rest of this garlic, pop it in. Now, once we get the lamb in here, it's going to marinate for 30 minutes. That, well, like I said before, when I rudely interrupted myself, was that this marinade will start to break down all of that collagen and make it really, really tender. So, depending on the cut of meat that you have, will depend on how long you cook it and what type of cooking method you use. So, general rule of thumb is that the part of the animal that works the most is the part of the animal that is the toughest, because that muscle on that animal has got the most work as it's been alive. So if we were talking about a cow, the toughest parts will be around the neck and the back of the legs there, because the animal walked around and it spent most of its time grazing, so lifting its head up and down to eat. So what we do is we make sure that for those cuts of meat from that part of the animal, and it's the same for most herbivores like sheep, same with pigs, we will give those tougher cuts of meat a long, slow cooking time. And usually with a wet method of cooking, so that there's plenty of time for the heat and sometimes the moisture to tenderize that meat. With the more expensive cuts that you find, the ones that come from across the back where there isn't a lot of exercise, that's where you would get your filet mignon, or those sorts of really expensive cuts. You don't want a long, slow cooking method. They're already tender, and it will really ruin an expensive cut of meat if that's the way you treat it. So for those ones, for those tender cuts of meat already, you can have fast and drier cooking methods. So things like grilling, marinating and then frying, that can definitely be used on those more tender cuts of meat. That's looking pretty good now. Salt's done its job. There's still some quite large sections in there. I'm not going to worry too much. The other part of this, so half of this will go into our marinade. The other half actually will be going into the oil that coats the bread before we're going to crisp it up in the oven. So what I'm going to do before I put the meat in to marinate is to actually put the oil and the garlic together. That means that the oil will become nice and garlicky as well. That's looking pretty good. Quite happy with that. Okay, that is a lot of garlic. We're going to really smell tomorrow. Alright, lucky we're not going anywhere. Okay, so I'm just going to even it out so that I can see how much there is, just so that I can actually apportion it equally. Okay, so I think about there is half. And there we go. Okay, mix it through. And that's the marinade all done. I'm just going to get another bowl for the oil. And we'll put that in together, measure it out and pop it in now. So we actually need our olive oil and we need 4 tablespoons. It is 1. And again, this doesn't have to be exact. Wouldn't want to go overboard too much, but we're not baking something that requires you to be exact. Bread baking, pretty much have to be on pat. Cakes, sponges, things like that, you definitely need to make sure that you are right on with the amount. This one, I'm using my eye a little bit and not worrying too much. Okay, so that is our olive oil in our bowl. We're going to use the rest of our garlic, and in it goes. All right, give it a bit of a swirl around. I'm going to be using our brush later, so that can sit there. And that's all done. Okay, so the next thing we're doing is cutting up our lamb. Now remember, the recipe doesn't say to do this. I'm doing this because our lamb is quite small. Actually, I'm not sure that I'm going to now. I'm having a think about it. I'm going to show you the loin chop that I got so you can see what I mean. Because it does ask for 2 lamb back straps, which is a very, very tender cut, and also or 2 leg steaks or mid-loin chops. I only managed to get loin chops, and even that was hard to do. Just having a look at how much it actually was. Yeah, $23 worth of meat right there. So, like I said, the other option with the lamb, the minced lamb, which is $7 for 500 grams, might not be such a bad option. Let's have a look at the meat itself. Okay. Because really, these are the sections we'll be eating. If I remove too much of this fat now, we could end up with it being quite dry, but we are marinating it for quite some time, so yeah, I might just marinate them whole, just as they are. So just show you that. I'm just going to pop them in a small dish. In they go. There's probably room for them. They've got to marinate for half an hour. So what I suggest you do in that period of time is to turn them, put the marinade over as evenly as you can. Now remember, it's important to get the meat really covered because this will help to really tenderize it and, of course, give it heaps of flavour. Now obviously we've only got one side in the meat at this point in time, so what we're going to do is give it a turn like that, get it all in. Make sure your hands are clean before you do this, so that both sides are getting treated to the marinade. Okay. Don't be worried about getting your hands in. It's a good thing to do. It's especially for this. You can use tongs if you want to, but if your hands are clean, this is fine. And there we go. All right, smells really good. If you wanted to put the cinnamon in just before this stage would be the time to do that. Okay. Cover it well. Okay, so that's it for now. I switch this off, wait for half an hour, we'll come back to cook and to do our toast. Right, back again. We're going to do our toast now. So my oil and garlic have been sitting here together for quite some time as my meat's been marinating. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a brush to just brush that over. This is a soy linseed. I prefer actually a dark rye for this recipe. Again, we don't have that in the shop at the moment. For whatever reason, this one will do. It says any crusty bread, so you could use a white. You really genuinely could use any that you enjoy, that you like. So should be getting a decent amount of this garlicky oil on the bread. It's going to crisp up really nicely in the oven. Now you need to put this towards the top of the oven. So remember what I said last week. Low end of the oven is the long slow cook. Top, it's a quick one, and that's what we're doing today. And the middle is for those medium ones. So I've got 8, as you can see. I put quite a lot on that. I'm a little bit worried that I'm going to have a hell of a lot of garlic and not much oil because I'm going to turn this over. This should only take 10 minutes in the oven, so it is 190. In a normal oven, fan force, drop it down about 10. And make sure it's been heating up for at least 10 minutes there. Like I said, I might need more on this one because I'm going to turn it over and add. You also, doing that one again, you might also want to consider turning these over halfway. Check up on them. The thing about bread is that it does cook very, very quickly once it actually starts. Once it starts to brown, it's not a slow process. It's a very quick one. So the trick for you guys is going to be to make sure that this does not burn in the oven. Okay, you really need to keep an eye on it. What I did end up doing was removing my lamb from my right, there we go. Removing my lamb from the bone. Just on thinking about it, there's not a lot there, so I decided just to take it off and fry it up that way. It's supposed to be medium rare. Again, that is personal choice. So if you want it a little bit more cooked, which I do, as you guys know, I don't like meat very much anyway, so red meat that is rare, don't love it. But some people do. Some people do want that pinkness inside, in which case you wouldn't cook it very long at all. Alright, a few minutes on each side. So I think it says here so that the lamb should cook for 3 to 4 minutes on each side. So it really is pretty fast cook. Once this is in, I'm going to put my lamb on. If we want this all out at the same time, it does take a bit of coordination. I've already made the salad that's going to go with mine. So I've just done a simple Greek salad. Pretty straightforward one, just to sit to the side. Right, so that's done. That's going to go in at the top of the oven for 10 minutes. There we go. Okay. You guys are coming with me. And we're going to sit right there and watch what we do. So, right, Get your pan nice and hot first. Now your stuff is in there marinating. I'll just actually show you the salad that I did. It's an easy one, just a green salad. I've got my plates ready as well, because like I said, once this is ready, you just need to serve up as soon as you possibly can. So have everything ready to go. Just letting that letting everything heat up. I'm just going to get my plates ready over here. Very easily, apparently. Just getting that hot while I put the salad out for the first one. Okay. That's looking pretty good. Now remember, I told you that I've already cut the skin from mine. Just going to make sure it's moving and it's hot enough before I do anything else. Cut the bone rather. Now I'm umming and ahhing about it. I've let it marinate on the bone for a while. Then I took it off. I'll let that heat up a little bit more. While you do this, make sure you do keep an eye on the toast. It smells divine. Should be that sizzle as everything goes in. I'm popping the marinade in too. Now I've got some quite large pieces here that I will be able to slice for you, reminding yourself that I really do prefer my meat not to be rare, even medium rare. I'm just going to let that go. I'm not going to move it, I'm not going to turn it. There's enough oil in there to keep it off the base. We don't want to agitate it too much. I'm going to turn the heat down a little though. Now that it's in there, we don't want it to burn on the outside before it's cooking it to a decent level on the inside. Again, we're keeping an eye on our toast. Hasn't been in there long, but the opportunity is to turn it over, and I'm suggesting that's what you do. It says just to put it in, and if you just put it in on a grill with nothing underneath it, that's fine, but I think in this case we probably will turn it over. I wish you could smell it. It actually smells really good. Now we want it to fry, we don't want it to braise in there. So we want it to keep it reasonably warm so that the juices aren't coming out and basically boiling it rather than frying it. So don't keep turning it basically, let it sear on that side that's down. Just turning the toast around. It's getting nice and dry on the top there. It needs to be nice and crispy. Just going to have a look at this. Nearly. So just keep an eye on it. It starts to change colour on the other side. What I also did while I was making the salad is I made a yogurt and garlic sauce. Not that this needs too much more garlic, but I think it will be good on the top. So it was just half a cup of Greek yogurt, but you can use any plain yogurt, and about a clove to 2 cloves of garlic, depending on how you like it. You can also add some chopped mint leaves in there that gives it a nice fresh flavour as well. And if you do what I was talking about last time, which was to make the wrap instead of the toast that we're doing, which is a little bit less time consuming, then you can definitely put a garlic sauce like that inside the wrap. It's pretty good. It's hard to see if this is crunching up. I can see a bit of brown, but it's actually quite firm. So what I'm going to do is turn it over. And just leave it on the other side now until I'm ready to serve. The lamb should sit for a while. So this has still got plenty of time. This is taking longer than I thought it would. Like I said, bread toasts pretty quickly. This one has obviously decided not to. What I might do in this one, we're not baking it like a cake. You can always turn the heat up if you think it's taking too long. And our lamb does have to sit for a little while before we serve it. So that still definitely has plenty of time. I'm going to use this one. Turn this. Got a really nice colour on it now. It's really good. And it smells really, really nice. I did leave some of the fat on from the tail of the chop. I basically cut the meat out and most of the fat, but I did leave it on for some of them. So there is a little bit of oil in there now, but like I said, it's not it's still frying off, it's not basting itself. Just making sure you take care when you're frying that you don't leave your pan unattended. You don't let it get too hot. This one's pretty good because the fat's sort of dampened down by the marinade, but we don't want to get the fat too volatile. It can catch fire if you let it go over the side, so we need to take extra careful with that. Mine's cooking rather quickly now, so we're just going to turn it down ever so slightly. I'm sort of wishing I'd put the cinnamon in it now, but the flavour's really, really good. A little squeeze of lemon at the end is also a really good idea. So there's lots of things you can put in this to enhance it once it's actually cooked. Okay, it is looking really good. So you can see it. There we go. It's really got a nice colour on it now. Alright. I know I said not to move it too much, but I'm just checking that everything's going okay. I'm going to turn up the heat on my oven, get that going. The good thing about bread though too is that if you do start to burn it, you can smell it burning, so you can get it up fairly quickly. Mind you, that smell of garlic just stung my eyes right then, so you might not smell this one quite so easily. Right, so after we cook this, we will be resting it it says for 10 minutes. The reason that we rest meat is because, remember I was talking to you before about the marinade, and how the muscle gets broken down by the acid. Well, that's continued by the heat. But what happens is the protein in the meat starts to change shape as it heats and as it cooks, and it can take a little bit of time for the protein to relax again, to get tender. If we don't give it that time, the meat can be a little bit tough. So a little bit of resting is always a really, really good idea on any meat you get out of the oven. It will really contribute to the tenderness that the cut of meat should give you, and the way that we've cooked it and prepared it for that marinade. Okay, we're getting a little few dark spots on each side now. I'm going to flip them a little. I think it's probably done. Really shouldn't take much longer than this. Some of them are getting quite dark, and I don't want them to get dried out. So what I'm going to do is, while you're sitting there, I'm going to move these to the foil that I've got sitting, waiting. Hang on, I'll just get that for you. Put you back over here. There we go. Okay. So I've got my foil sitting, waiting. I'm going to put my meat on there, so that as the toast keeps cooking, this will be resting, ready to cut and serve. As you can see, there's some bigger bits in this and some smaller bits. They're still quite toasty from the marinade. That's given it a really nice colour. So we're just going to cover it, let it sit, okay, until we're ready to actually serve. I'm just going to check this bread. It's taking way longer than I thought it was going to take. Oh. Even though I've turned it up, it's still taking ages. Yeah, it's going to be a while longer. So, I'll turn this off so you don't sit here watching bread cook, because that's really boring, and I'll be back very soon. Okay, so I've got one of the small pieces of meat out. I'm just cutting it so that I can fan it out. I'm going to cut it thinly so that I can pop it out over the meat. This is a little bit more than well done, but medium. But remember, I like the meat that I eat to be well done. There's probably about 2 to 3 large pieces for each person. So not a lot. So by cutting it thinly, and we can cut it that way too. By cutting it thinly, we can certainly get plenty out. And also, this is something that is on toast, so it's easier to eat if we do this. So you can see the meat is still fairly pink inside, while being really nice and warm. I'm going to have to keep an eye on that bread, because it is taking forever and 3 days, which is annoying me. So, but it was starting to burn, and I have turned the heat up like really high. Each time I open the stupid thing, it actually bursts out quite a lot of steam, so I have to be careful. All ovens are different. They all have their little idiosyncrasies. So mine just happens to be an incredibly slow oven. It's a little bit frustrating, but I'm kind of getting used to using it a little bit more. So remember, cutting it nice and thin. I better check it, because I don't want it to burn. After all this time, that would be a nightmare. Oh, it's looking good. Okay. Well, I'm going to take some time to turn it and do the other side again, because I should have let it get to this state before. Don't use your fingers, use your tongs. Flip it over, and back in it goes Should give me enough time to get the rest of this cut. There's some quite fatty pieces in here. I had the fat on meat, so I'll probably just leave that. My family don't seem to mind, but I definitely do. I don't like it. Don't like the mouthfeel or anything. So as you can see, for $23, this isn't a whole lot of meat, and this is something that we talked about when we talked about budgeting and making dollars go further. This is not something that I would do. It is quite an expensive dish. I think the rest are in there, that's fine. I think we're good. Awesome. Okay. Honestly, it does smell fabulous. Really, really does. We'll leave that there to serve it. So I've got my plate with my salad on already. Like I said, this is something you need to serve pretty quickly because the heat will go from it also quickly, but it is or can be a lunch dish, so it's okay for it to cool down a little. Alright, let's have a look and see if they're done. I think they need just a little bit more time. So annoying because I'm really hungry. And everyone's like running in and smelling it, and it's smelling really good. So I've got rid of the top for the time being. There's nothing in here that can really get to it, but still. So I've got my plate ready. There it is. Just need tongs. Okay, that's perfect now. Definitely done. All right, so I'll let you have a look at the toast. Just be cautious if you're putting it on a plate that has had salad. You might want to be cautious about that, just so that it doesn't make your toast dry. So there it is. You can see it, nice and crunchy. We're going to layer on some of our lamb. Remember, there's not heaps, so you don't have to be too generous. Not the prettiest of dishes, I have to say, but it's actually really, really tasty. So that on there, that looks like it needs a little bit more on that side. There we go. All right. What I suggest you do now is a little bit of lemon. Lime would do, but lemon's better for this one. And you can pop on some of that garlic sauce as well. Don't need heaps. And there we go. That's what it looks like. Don't have to have the garlic sauce. But there we are. Yes, hopefully you can see it. So that is our lamb. See you next time.